Hello and welcome to another episode of TV on TV. I'm State Representative Tommy Vitolo. You're watching Brookline Interactive Group. We've got a surprise show for you today, a great show. We always have a great show. Today we've got Lionel Pomerantz, who's going to and vaccination. And I want to thank Lionel for sort of stepping into the breach. We had a last minute cancellation. You'll also notice I'm not in my usual setting. I'm not even using a fake background, right? I am at the State House. I come in about once every 2 months, and today happens to be the day. And so this is my office. Not many folks have actually been in it. It doesn't hold very many people at once. But you see I've got a flag over here. I got a map behind me. There's the district. And I even got a little picture of President Kennedy right there. So we're having fun, but other than that, it's the usual show. We've got 30 minutes and we're going to do the best we can. As usual, I start off with some news, and I've got some news in my notes over here. Again, I'm not in my usual setup, so you got to work with me on this. But I want to run through some news, some of which you probably have heard, others maybe you haven't heard quite as much. There continues to be a national stimulus plan in negotiation between members of Congress and the president. And there have been some preliminary numbers floating around about how much money would go directly to state governments, including Massachusetts, how much money would go to local governments, incredibly important for Brookline, and also to individuals. And the number that's being floated is $1,400 per person. Of course, there were $600 earlier, so that's a $2,000 total. And what the threshold would be before a person got less than the full $1,400, or perhaps none of it at all if they're fortunate enough to have high enough income. And so those are all in negotiations, and we're anxious to see, of course, where that goes. FEMA has awarded $200 million to Massachusetts for vaccination distribution. Of course, getting that vaccine into arms is really the big news of the day, the week, the month, and we will talk more about it. You may have heard there's been a bit of a snowstorm roughly between the Rocky Mountains and the Mississippi River. And while not necessarily substantial by New England's standards, for the good folks in Texas and Oklahoma and Kansas and Louisiana, it's a doozy. And this is a national disaster. And this is the kind of a national disaster where we fully expect the federal government to step in and provide substantial assistance, just as we expected it for the California wildfires or Superstorm Sandy in New York, when the very people who are suffering now, their legislators, their congresspeople were saying, no, don't send money to those liberal states. They should have been prepared. Newsflash, maybe they should have been prepared, but we have an obligation to take care of each other. And that means that when one part of the country is really suffering, we all pitch in. And so I am hopeful that despite Senator Cruz's obnoxious remarks over time, we ignore his remarks and we help Texas anyway because they're Americans. They live in America. They deserve to be helped. And I'm sure that's exactly what President Biden is going to do. You may have heard millions are without power. And sort of, it's an interesting question. Why are they without power, right? We've heard folks on the right blame the Green New Deal. Folks on the left have blamed oil and gas. Turns out I'm on the left. I also blame oil and gas, but I also have expertise in this area. And so the wind and solar output in Texas, for example, has been right about where one would expect it to be in February in Texas. What is not where it was expected to be are oil, gas, coal, and nuclear power plants, none of which are operating at levels they were expected to be at because of the weather. It turns out that the folks who built natural gas-fired power plants in Texas didn't weatherize them for cold weather, assuming it would never get cold in Texas, and it turns out they were wrong. The nuclear power plant, some of the controls froze, and so they couldn't safely operate the plant, so they took it offline. The big piles of coal outside coal-fired power plants have frozen solid, sort of like the way snow and ice can freeze into a hard clump, and so they can't get the coal. It's kind of a disaster. To make matters worse, because of the rolling blackouts, there isn't enough electric power to power the oil and gas wells, which would be generating the gas necessary to run the power plants. They're kind of in a tough spot, and really it's going to take probably until the weather breaks for them to come out of that. Finally, the last thing in national news, there was a proposal led by Senator Schumer and our Senator Warren regarding student debt. The proposal was to cancel or to eliminate $50,000 in student debt per person. President Biden has said nope, maybe 10,000, and he's kind of walked that back. It remains to be seen. There's kind of an open question as to whether or not we should be focused on bailing water out of the boat or plugging the hole in the boat. If student costs for attending school remain incredibly high, bailing out the current debt is helpful, but doesn't solve the problem for future students. And so my hope is that we will have a more careful conversation about reducing the cost of attending college in the first place, so that more folks can attend and not be burdened by that debt. At the state level, the big news of the day, as I said, we're going to talk about vaccines. Folks over the age of 65, folks who live in low-income senior housing, and folks who have 2 or more of the comorbidities listed by the Massachusetts Department of Public Health can begin receiving vaccines as early as today. And that means either calling 211 or going to the website. And good luck with the website, because it turns out that it's not always working today. It's sort of under too much stress, but www.vaxfinder, vaxfinder.mass.gov. And then you can also try macovidvaccines.com. And we're going to talk to Lionel in a few minutes, as I said, and we're going to learn more about other ways that folks can get help getting the vaccine. But if you're over 65, if you've got 2 or more comorbidities, you want to try to go to the website or dial 211 and get yourself an appointment. There's obviously about 1 million people who are scheduled to get a vaccine in this current phase, and we don't have 1 million vaccines in the state. And so if you can get through, you may have to take an appointment for a few weeks from now, but get that appointment. We want to get you vaccinated. We want to be safe. A new variant, the South African variant of COVID-19, has been detected in Massachusetts. We don't know exactly what that means. We suspect it's covered by the vaccine, but it's possible that the vaccine isn't as resilient against the South African variant. South African variant may be more likely to put people in the hospital. Look, the bottom line is we're racing, right? So, you want to wear your mask when you're not on Brookline Interactive Group on TV, and you want to get vaccinated, and that's what we're up against. At the state level, further news is that committee assignments came out in the legislature, something that I pay a little bit of attention to. And I'm not going to go through all 160 members of the House and 40 members of the Senate. I'll just mention one. This guy, Representative Tommy Vitolo, has been named Vice Chair of Election Laws, so that's very exciting. And also serves on the Joint Committee for Tourism, Arts, and Cultural Development, Elder Affairs, and the House Committee on Steering Policy and Scheduling. So those are my committee assignments. I'm honored to be named a vice chair. I'm very excited. I actually had a lunch meeting with Chair Dan Ryan about election laws, and we talked about the upcoming Boston election. We talked about the upcoming elections in cities and towns, and we strategized about how to make sure that our election laws are both appropriate during COVID and then also more appropriate ongoing. And so more on that will come. There's also a new committee focused on COVID. Very exciting. It's being chaired by Bill Driscoll Jr., who is a member of the House who's got tremendous background and experience on emergency management. And they will have an oversight hearing on February 25th to hear testimony from the executive branch about the vaccine rollout, which I think everyone can agree has been underwhelming. Finally, at the state level, the RMV is pushing folks to go ahead and get their vehicles inspected. About 500,000 vehicles currently do not have their inspection up to date. And so go ahead, check out if your vehicle needs to be inspected. And if it does, go get it inspected, right? We live in a civil society. There are rules here, people. Finally, locally, elections are coming. Elections are coming. Election day is May 4th. It's a Tuesday. At this moment, there is no mail-in voting, but there is absentee voting. Everyone is eligible to vote absentee if either they have any concern they might have COVID or they might catch COVID, which is everybody. So you should feel free to apply for an absentee ballot and vote in the May 4th election absentee. You should also feel free, if you prefer, to vote in person, because we will have polls open on Tuesday, May 4th. Want to run for town meeting? Want to run for select board, school committee, town clerk, library trustee, constable? They're all available, right? So think about that. And if that's the kind of thing you want to do, you should do it. And I will say, you can always feel free to call me and talk to me about it. 617-872-8921. You can also email me at tommy.vitolo@mahouse.gov. So if you've got any thoughts about running for office, give me a call. Finally, the warrant is open for town meeting. That will close in a couple of weeks. So if there's a bylaw you've been thinking about or a resolution you've been thinking about, now's the time to file it. And that's really all the news. I took a lot longer than I normally do, but you know, there was a lot of news this week. So without further ado, I'm excited to bring on Lionel Pomerantz, who is a volunteer for KI, and he's been working on all kinds of COVID-related volunteerism. Lionel, thanks for coming on the show.
Hi, Tommy. Thanks for having me. I'm so glad to be here with you.
Now, Lionel had reached out to me and said, hey, I want to help. And I was busy looking for ways to help him get plugged in with COVID vaccination assistance, but he found an answer before I did. So Lionel, tell us what you're up to with KI.
Yep. So I think it's an impulse that a lot of people have had in these times. I know your newsletter has mentioned, starting with 75 and older people in phase 2 is great, but it's not the most internet literate demographic. So at KI, we're working on a couple of related efforts. First and foremost, most generally, we're committed to making sure anybody in the community who's eligible for vaccination can overcome whatever hurdles they may face. That could be something as simple as getting signed up. It may be easy if you're a younger person but not yet eligible to navigate the website. If you're an 80-year-old looking to get signed up, it's certainly not the easiest thing in the world. We're committed to helping people with transportation needs, whatever it takes. And a more specific thrust, we're actually having an event at the shul next week, specifically vaccinating Holocaust survivors and their caretakers who are 65 or older. This is obviously something that we feel really lucky to be involved in. Obviously, it goes without saying, these are people who've seen a lot and have definitionally made it through COVID. So we feel lucky to be able to provide this kind of care to the special population. Additionally, within the KI community, we're activating the phone tree to reach out both within, see if any members are eligible, and also beyond. Maybe we have members who are themselves not eligible but know people, and to see what kind of outreach we can do to make sure anybody, again, who is eligible is getting signed up and getting the vaccine.
So I want to sort of dive in a little bit at first with the Holocaust survivor effort. It's really remarkable. Folks who are not of the Jewish persuasion or didn't grow up in an area where there's a substantial population of Jewish people often find it shocking to even think about Holocaust survivors as a population, right? World War II was a long time ago. But of course there are Holocaust survivors, and they are absolutely remarkable people and have incredible stories, really worth listening to. When I was on the campaign trail, I knocked on the door of someone and she answered the door, and we started talking for a few minutes, and she began to share her story, how she lived in the woods of Poland with her mother for a year and a half. Her brother and her father were captured by the Nazis and killed, but she and her mother survived in the woods, right? These sort of unbelievable stories. And so, I think it's absolutely incredible and not at all surprising that an organization like KI would step up and recognize this this important and very specific population who live in places like Brookline and Newton and the surrounding area. Do you have any sense for how many Holocaust survivors and their caretakers will be participating? How is that going? Have you been able to get any good outreach on that? Tell us a little more about what you're expecting there.
Unfortunately, I don't have a specific number to give you. I think it's a good sign that the sign up is no longer accepting new folks. So I think we're expecting a good turnout for this. KI takes seriously the idea of never forgetting, and I think it means both not forgetting what happened, but also not forgetting those who were fortunate enough to survive this event. So being there and being a place where we can really be the center of that special community, I think is very meaningful to us.
I think it's really remarkable, and I'm hopeful that recognizing that next week is not the week to do it, but that as we come out of COVID and as the infection rates go down and vaccination rates go up and people are safe again in communities, that members of that community will be able to participate with the broader community and have some more of these conversations and help younger folks like you and I better understand all the things that are worth knowing and hearing about with respect to World War II and the Holocaust and the time thereafter. It's you're right. It's essential that we don't forget. Part of that is making sure we learn more. So I'm delighted about all of that. Now tell us about the broader work with helping folks get scheduled, get to getting the vaccine. What are the parts that you find seem to be the most frequent roadblocks, or the roadblocks that seem to come up again and again?
So I imagine the first part is not going to be too surprising to you. Navigating the website is a big obstacle, especially for the populations that are being prioritized at this point. So I know that the state has added a phone line, which I think is a great development, but giving an alternative way to reach out. When 75 and overs were first allowed to get the vaccine, as I understand it, it was only the website sign up, which seems like a real mismatch of populations and tools at their disposal. We really want to be a sort of kind, caring, and patient place for them to reach out. So if they have any trouble, the other thing we want to help people do is make sure that they're ready come the day of their appointment. One, if they need help getting to their appointment, we want to set up transportation, either with a volunteer or with, if needed, with some of the more official transport options in the community. One thing I do want to take a moment to be clear about, obviously the state opened up vaccinations to people who accompany 75 and older folks. This is very much not an opportunity for people to find a random old person and cut the line. If that is what you are thinking when you hear about a program like this, please do not contact us. That's not what we're trying to do. When it comes to readiness on the day of, we want to make sure people have whatever identification they might need. If there are any forms, there's an attestation form online for certain groups to make sure that they're appropriate, whereas somebody who's 75 or older may just need an identification showing that. Just helping people be confident that on the day of, they're going to be able to get through their appointments without any trouble.
So you mentioned the website. I'm not surprised at all, right? I've used the word underwhelming to describe the Department of Public Health rollout of the vaccination program. Really a lot of missed opportunities. Nevertheless, we are where we are, and 211, of course, is the phone number that folks can call if they're having trouble with the website. Keep in mind, there's only so number of vaccines per week. They're saying 110,000 in practice. It's more than that, but no guarantee that we'll continue getting more than that at the moment. And so, scheduling 1 million people to get vaccinated when you're only getting 110,000 vaccines a week is a little tricky. Nevertheless, the state is trying to work through that. In addition to the website, you talked about getting ready day of. The nearest mass vaccination site is Fenway Park, although there are some sites in Newton and Points West. Are you finding that folks need help getting to the site, sort of, in-person help, or is most of this work just sort of getting them an appointment?
So far, our work has primarily been getting people an appointment. This is an effort, I would say, really in its nascent stage. We're working to get it spun up. I appreciate the opportunity to be on here and try and get the word out a little bit about it. So we have not worked yet getting people rides specifically, but it sounds a little cheesy, but we really do want to be the one-stop shop for people to get what they need and feel like they can go from being unsigned up to ready to go day of. So want to get the word out there.
And if folks need help, how do they reach out to you? They look you up in the phone book? How should folks reach out for that help?
Honestly, if you still have a phone book, you probably could find KI in there, but we're not counting on it. There are a couple of ways that you can reach out to us. By phone, we're at 617-277-9155. We can be reached by email at covid@congki.org. We can also be found online at the same website, congki.org.
Because we're doing this live, BIG may not have had the opportunity to put that text on the screen. So I'm actually going to ask you to just say it for us again, so that folks who scramble to get a pen or pull their phone out and try to type it in, maybe they didn't get all of it. And it really is so important, folks. If you need the help, the community wants to be helpful, and this is what community is all about. So please reach out for that help if the time is right for you. And Lionel's going to tell us one more time how to get that help.
Sure thing. So first and foremost, phone 617-277-9155. And I joke about the phone book, but it is the main KI number. So feel free, if you find it on the website, go ahead and give that a call. The website is congki.org. And the email address is covid@congki.org.
And can you give us a sense of how many people per day? Are you guys getting overwhelmed? What does it feel like in terms of the number of people you're helping?
I think we're at a good start. I would say we're not overwhelmed, and we're hoping to grow it. So please do not hesitate. If this is help that you think you need, or if you know somebody who could use it, please do reach out, and we'd be happy to help.
Now, if a member of the community wants to contribute, wants to be a helper, like you are, Lionel, should they call the same number or reach out the same way and say, hey, I'm ready to jump in and be of assistance?
I would say a good place to start is emailing that covid@conki.org. I do want to reiterate, it's not a place for opportune one-off driving a 75-year-old, but people who want to get involved, I think should reach out. Obviously needs will ebb and flow, but I think anybody who wants to be involved, it would be, we'd love to hear from you at the very least.
I think that's exactly right. There's been some questions about the governor's decision to include that sort of bring a friend provision. But the other side of the coin is, we need vaccines in arms. And so, look, there's 1 million people who became eligible today to get vaccinated. And so if you're in that group, look, you might not be that you're over 75. It might be for some other reason you're having trouble getting an appointment. And so I have no doubt that, even if you are 34 and you're having trouble with the website or have some other difficulty getting an appointment, that our friends at KI would be happy to help you. Is that right, Lionel? There's no age requirement.
That is right. And I think something of note with today, phase 2.1 was 75 and over. Today is 65 and over, which is obviously the highest volume, but it's also folks with 2 comorbidities. We're not all doctors at KI, but if you're not sure whether you qualify, that might be a new issue you're running into, give us a call. We'll do our best to help you get squared away, whatever you need. So don't let age be a blocker for you. Our goal is to get obstacles out of the way. So feel free to reach out to us.
And I think that's exactly the right message. Different people have different circumstances, and the idea is to help people get vaccinated. This is a once in a century circumstance, right? This is remarkable times we live in. And no matter what age you are, we're making this up as we go. And if we're guided by focusing on helping those who need the help and asking for help when we need it, we're going to be at our best. Lionel, I'm so grateful to you and to all of our friends at Kehelet Israel for really stepping up, finding a need, and saying we're going to help. And we don't even know exactly how we're going to do it yet. We don't know how we're going to solve all these problems yet, but we're committed to doing it. Lionel is a really remarkable guy. He reached out to me and said, I want to help. How can I do so? And I'm so thrilled, Lionel, that you found a place to really step in. And like I said, I'm so proud to be in a community where organizations like KI exist and step up for folks who need it. So Lionel, thank you very much for doing what it is you're doing. And please send my regards and the regards from Brookline Interactive Group to all of the volunteers at KI.
Will do. We appreciate your kind words and appreciate the opportunity to get the word out.
Folks, you've been watching Brookline Interactive Group. We're on every Thursday at 2:30. Whether or not we've got a guest scheduled or we do it on the fly, as we have with Lionel, thank you so much. One of the bright spots of the pandemic is we're using software like Zoom to make connections that we might have had trouble making beforehand. And it allows us to increase our creativity and increase our flexibility. And we're doing that. And so thank you, Corbin, our staff member at BIG, who makes all of the magic happen. And thank you, viewers. This has been another episode of TV on TV, and we will see you a week from today. We'll have another guest. We'll have some more news. We'll have another conversation, and it will be a delight, no doubt. So we might be a few seconds early. That's how it works when you don't have commercials. And thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.